And for more on the External Affairs Minister's UK visit, I'm joined by DD India's Olly Barratt from London. Well, it's a day later, Olly, but the Diwali spirit still seems to persist the world over. So first of all, happy Diwali. What more can you tell us about Dr. Jaishankar's 5-day visit, which, as a statement said, is aimed at giving new impetus to friendly ties?
Happy Diwali, Gautam, to you as well. Yes, and that Diwali spirit was marked at Downing Street, as you say, with the meeting between the External Affairs Minister and the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. There's also been that interaction with members of the Indian diaspora at a temple in northwest London too. As ever, the meetings with the diaspora, a key part of this visit by the External Affairs Minister. We know as well that there will be a meeting with the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly. There is clearly a lot to discuss when it comes to international affairs at the moment, given the crisis in the Middle East, among other issues that those two will want to discuss in their meeting. Also worth saying that the Indian side and the British side continue to discuss progress towards a free trade deal. Certainly the Downing Street position at the moment when it comes to negotiations on that trade deal are that good progress is being made, that discussions and negotiations continue, but clearly no resolution, no conclusion has been found yet. So you would expect that that trade deal will be very much on the agenda during the visit of the External Affairs Minister. As I say, lots going on in the world at the moment, not least the crisis in the Middle East, and you would expect that that will be very high up the agenda when James Cleverly, the UK Foreign Secretary, meets with Mr. Jaishankar, the External Affairs Minister here in London.
Well, certainly, and that we will talk about further as well. But right now, I believe there's some breaking news that's come in, something that is related to the United Kingdom's domestic affairs, with the update that UK's Home Minister Suella Braverman has been sacked. What more can you tell us about it? There's been of late a lot of upheaval in the Conservative camp, in the Tories' camp, and this seems to be another one.
Yeah, furious speculation in recent days, Gautam, about the future of the UK Home Secretary, the Interior Minister, Suella Braverman, and we now know that she has been sacked by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. He is carrying out a cabinet reshuffle that is underway as we speak. So we wait to hear who is going to replace Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. But her position had been under huge scrutiny in recent days after a number of controversies, but one particularly related to the policing of pro-Palestinian marches in London at the weekend. She had an argument with the police about exactly how that should be handled. There was also a large controversy about some of the language that Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, used to describe the marches happening at the weekend, but also the way she talked about the policing operation and appeared to call into question the operational independence of London Police. And that led to, as I say, renewed scrutiny on her position. And we understand that she has now been sacked by Rishi Sunak, the UK Prime Minister. So that means there is a vacancy at the Home Office, which will need to be filled. We expect that there will be several other movements in Cabinet today. Just going back to the visit of the External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, that may well mean actually that some of the meetings he has planned in London in the next few days take place with rather different personnel than he was expecting. We'll have to keep an eye on James Cleverly, the UK Foreign Secretary, to see whether he remains in post for that meeting with Dr. Jaishankar. But yes, Suella Braverman has been sacked by UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Huge controversy around her position in recent days. She's been asked to leave the government, is how it's being described by Downing Street, and she has, we're told, accepted.
But why do you think it's happened in such an indelicate manner? It just seems that it's almost like a public display of how upset Rishi Sunak is with his Interior Minister, his Interior Secretary, because of how she had been conducting herself, not just in this phase because of the protests related to what's been happening in that region in the Middle East, but also earlier on the issue of refugees.
That's right. There have been a number of controversies surrounding Suella Braverman in recent weeks and months. A number of episodes in which language that she has used around topics like immigration, for example, around topics like homelessness, have been really disavowed by other members of her government. And a number of Conservative MPs had been saying for some time that perhaps it was time to move her on. But given the real intense controversy in recent days around policing, around the pro-Palestinian march that we saw at the weekend, I think Rishi Sunak has clearly come to the view that not sacking her would have made him look weak, given that she wrote an article, for example, last week in which the language that she used around policing and around the pro-Palestinian marches in the UK, that language was not signed off by Downing Street. We were told at the end of last week that Number 10 were looking into, were conducting an internal process into how exactly she'd managed to write an article for a national newspaper which contained language that wasn't signed off by her bosses at Downing Street. And so given all of that scrutiny around her position, Rishi Sunak has clearly decided that actually in terms of his leadership, he needed to fire Suella Braverman to look like he still has authority at the top of his party. We have been expecting a cabinet reshuffle for some time ahead of the next UK general election. We just didn't know when it would take place, and clearly the controversy around Suella Braverman and around her comments that were made last week and that article that she wrote about the pro-Palestinian marches, that has accelerated that process towards this reshuffle. Rishi Sunak also is going to use it, one expects, to try and reset his government, to retool it ahead of what is going to be a general election campaign kicking off in the not too distant future.
Yes, and in terms of what could lie ahead for Suella Braverman, because I believe that she's still quite popular with a particular segment of the Tories and has been quite feisty in her role, so I believe that she might want to carry it forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Gautam. She is popular with certain segments of the Conservative Party who believe that actually some of the language that she uses that is sometimes criticised for being indelicate or controversial or divisive, some Conservative MPs believe she speaks for a large chunk of the electorate, of the population, and they will be upset that she has been fired at this point. The gamble for Rishi Sunak, the UK Prime Minister, is that you then put a powerful figure on the backbenches who could cause you trouble with a certain segment of your own party, who could be overtly critical of your administration from the backbenches in the weeks and months ahead. And that will be difficult potentially for him. But in terms of her future, one of the other elements to this is that it's been long speculated that she is trying to position herself for a possible leadership challenge to run the Conservative Party if the Conservatives lose the next election and if UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at that point were to leave the leadership of the Conservative Party or even face a leadership challenge. So that you have to factor into all of this as well. Some of her public comments recently have also been very much interpreted in that frame as well, in that context, in that perspective. This idea that Suella Braverman has really been positioning herself for a run at the leadership if and when a vacancy arises.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of how things are shaping up and what may come in the coming days, would the Rwanda case, which is supposed to come up in court on Wednesday, related to how the British government wants to deport people who are seeking asylum, really, and are refugees in all manners that you can really describe that term, could that also have a bearing on how Rishi Sunak's government shapes up leading to that election?
Very much so. Rishi Sunak will want to have a Home Secretary in place who can deal with whatever comes out of that Supreme Court decision on migration policy later this week. If the Supreme Court decides that the UK cannot push ahead with that policy to move some asylum seekers to Rwanda, remove them from this country for their asylum process, then you will need a Home Secretary who can deal with the fallout from that. On the other side of the coin, point, if the Home Secretary is in a position where the Supreme Court has ruled that the UK can push ahead with that migration policy, then again, you'll need a Home Secretary who can handle that process, who can handle the start of flights supposedly leaving the UK with asylum seekers on, removing them to Rwanda. So that absolutely will be factored into Rishi Sunak's decision-making now about who replaces Suella Braverman. The speculation in recent days has been that the UK government may be expecting to lose that case, and therefore Rishi Sunak may well be looking to appoint a new Home Secretary who can deal with the fallout from that, if indeed that is the way that the court decides to go.
All right. Well, lots to look out for in the coming, I guess, hours or days perhaps, where the UK's domestic politics is concerned, which has an impact even on its foreign ties, because our External Affairs Minister is set to meet his counterpart, the UK counterpart as well. Thanks a lot for joining us for the time being, Olly Barratt.